button, and then I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Okay, right. So before we begin today's session, I don't know which group it was, but one of my groups, they were highlighting that, sir, we do not understand what on earth is going on. So what I have chosen to now do is to obviously just take the time to actually kind of give you guys a more broader overview of what it is we're doing in this module. Okay, kind of just to help assist you to connect the dots as to understand visually why it is we're doing Sage Business Cloud and how it all connects with what you learned last semester in accounting. Okay, I don't think you guys are one of the groups that I taught accounting to. Okay, but yeah, I just wanted to quickly, obviously, put you guys in that position where things are becoming a little more clear, or hopefully become a little more clear by virtue of what we do there. So let me quickly open up this document and we're just going to briefly go over it. Okay. All right. Does someone post something in the chat? Okay. No, it's fine. All right. Cool. So this is a lovely document that a friend of mine who teaches Sage Business Cloud actually produced and was so kind enough to actually share with me. So the first thing that I'd like us to go over is the accounting equation. All right. Now the accounting equation, as you can see, is slightly different from what I usually teach my students, or what most of us may be used to. Okay, but it still is correct. Okay. So with her, she said assets is equals to sales minus cost of sales, okay, plus income minus expenses. And this is why I say it's a little bit different, because for me, sales falls under income. In fact, it's not for me, but generally sales falls under income. And cost of sales is an expense, so it falls under expenses. So she didn't need to actually put this out separately, okay? But again, it's not necessarily wrong, okay? It's not necessarily wrong. And then after that, after expenses, we have owner's equity, and then we have plus liabilities, okay? So that's our accounting equation. And the reason why this is so important is because obviously we know it all begins and ends with the accounting equation, all right? Because that then helps us understand double entry, all right? And what is double entry? Double entry is the fact that every transaction affects at least two different accounts, at least. In some transactions, you affect more than just two accounts, all right? But at least two accounts are always affected by a single transaction, all right? Awesome stuff. Then, what else do we want to touch on? Okay, if you look at this wheel, you see it's the bookkeeping cycle. Maybe let me try and zoom in. You see that it's a bookkeeping cycle. Now you see that she's actually also color coded this stuff. So the green here pertains to this green over here. All right. Okay. So as we get into a transaction, we'll talk about the section shaded in green. Okay. So we know that the bookkeeping cycle all starts with a transaction. Okay. It all starts with a transaction. Now, a transaction can be done for cash, okay, or on credit, okay? And when we say for cash, it doesn't mean just literally the cash. It can also mean via EFT or via a swiping our card, okay? So that's what they mean by bank and cash, okay? We can also do a transaction on credit, Okay, so we can buy from a supplier on credit, or we can sell to a customer on credit. Okay, then finally, we've got a general journal transaction, or a transaction that would only affect the general journal, such as a settlement discount granted or a settlement discount received. All right. Also, interest charged or interest received. All right. Yes, recorded in the general journal. Okay. So those are just illustrations of the different transactions we get. All right. And how they can be recorded or what they're done on. Okay, then we move to the next thing in the bookkeeping cycle, right? Which is source documents. Okay, source documents. Now we know source documents, we could get a cash slip or a cash tax invoice, all right? Or we can get a receipt. And oftentimes we kind of mix these three, all right? We don't tend to separate them all too much, okay? Although we should, because they're not exactly the same thing, okay? So those are the different types of source documents that we can get. We can also get an original tax invoice. And when we get an original tax invoice, what is that telling us? That's telling us that we did this transaction. We went and we did this transaction, and in this transaction we are the customer, since it's an original. Okay. So in other words, we went and we bought goods on credit, or we bought services on credit. Okay, as a customer. Okay. Then we have the original return or debit, return and debit. Okay, so here what is going on? Again, since it's original, we are the customer. But in addition to that, what's going on here? It means that we are the ones who have gone and given back goods to the supplier, whoever we bought from initially. Okay. Then we have a duplicate tax invoice. Since this document is a duplicate, what it means is that we are the supplier in the transaction, because the supplier keeps the duplicate and the customer keeps the original. Okay, so if there is a duplicate tax invoice, that means that the what we have sold to someone on credit. Okay, right. We have sold to someone on credit. Then we go on to a duplicate credit note. Now, a duplicate credit note, all right, is basically a document that, remember, credit note is a document whenever we have a return or someone requests a rebate, okay, or we overcharge someone, we will a credit note will be supplied. So even here we could have written original credit note, okay, all right, but here we have a duplicate credit note. Okay, so again, somebody is returning goods to us, or is asking for a rebate, or we had overcharged them. Okay. What's this VC learn? And then here she's just highlighting that if you have a turnover of more than $1 million a year, you have to register for VAT. Nothing to negotiate there. Okay. Then remember again, also when it comes to VAT, we learned this in Unit 3 in your accounting textbook. When it comes to VAT, you can be either on the invoice basis or the cash or payment basis. Okay. Typically, everybody is, or most of us are defaulted to the invoice basis. Then you have your standard VAT rate. You have your standard VAT rate, okay, which we know is 15%. And then she goes on to give examples of zero rated supply, okay, and examples of exempt supply, okay. Right. So that is your source documents. Okay. Now, number 3, you can see, is in what I'd call a darkish pink. I don't know. You know, as men don't know colors. Okay. What we'd call a darkish pink. And here at step 3, remember, this is where we are doing what? We're taking the source documents and now we're entering these transactions into our journals. Okay? Right. So here, now this is where we begin to bring into perspective Sage and what its role actually is. Okay? We've had so far a transaction take place, we've had source documents. Now we want to record these transactions. All right, that's why they call the journals the books of first entry, because it's at this point that we begin to record what has transpired. All right, there's no other place where we start, really. Okay, so here, whenever we sell something for cash or we receive cash, we know we record it in the cash payments, cash receipts journal. Okay, if we're recording things manually. Okay, now in Sage, what do? We record that in the bank. All right, can you see? So Sage, we're doing the very same thing. It's just that in Sage, it's then doing that work for us. Okay, we don't have to do as much work. We just enter in the necessary information. It'll then record accordingly. Okay, so if we want to record a payment that we made for cash, right? We know that in our books, we typically record this in the cash payments journal. But in Sage, again, we record it in the bank. Okay, we'd go to the bank and record it there. Okay, then petty cash journal. So if there's a transaction that affected the petty cash, we'd then also just record that in the bank. Okay. Then if we have bought some stuff on credit, okay, we know that that would be recorded in the creditor's journal. Okay. In Sage, we go and we create a supplier invoice. Okay. We create a supplier's invoice. Okay. Then when we have a return, all right. In other words, we have also known as a rebate. Okay. Or what else was it? I mentioned when we return goods, when there's been a rebate, or what was the other one? Rebate, returns, and when we've been overcharged. All right, we record that in the creditor's allowance journal. Here we just go to suppliers and we go to return under Sage. Okay, then moving on from that, whenever we sell things on credit, okay, we know whenever we sell on credit, inventory on credit, we know it must be recorded in the debtor's journal. In Sage, all you need to do is to go and create a customer tax invoice. Okay, and we're going to see some stuff in relation to customers today. Okay, so all we need to do there is create a customer tax invoice. Cool, no problem. Second last one, if we have someone return goods to us, okay, all right, or request a rebate from us, or we overcharge them, all right, we'd enter that into the debtor's allowance journal. Okay, on Sage, we'd go and process a customer credit note. Okay, and finally, if we have journal entries, all right, for the general journal, okay, we would then record that manually in the general journal. Right, I earlier gave examples of what you call it. I earlier gave examples of, what was it? Settlement discount granted or received, and interest charged or received. Okay. Now, when it comes to Sage, we go to the accounting area to process journal entries. Okay. Right. So again, Can you see? Once we've entered this information into the journals in Sage, or should I say into Sage, okay? The double entry will be done for us in step 4. Remember, step 4 is the general ledger accounts, the T accounts, okay? If we were doing this manually, we'd need to enter in all the accounts into the relevant general ledger T accounts. But because Sage is, a software package that is there for our convenience, guess what happens? We don't need to do anything because Sage actually does all of those things for us. Okay. Moment they're done doing all the general ledger entries and so forth, they then go on to populate. It then goes on to populate the trial balance. Okay. Then it goes on to populate the trial balance. And through the trial balance, remember the trial balance is just a list of accounts, right? That show the balances on each T account, whether it's supposed to be debited, whether it's supposed to be credited. Okay. From there, we then have completed our bookkeeping cycle, and then we can have our monthly income statement, all right, or profit and loss or statement of comprehensive income statement populated. Sage again does this for us, okay, and then we also would have our balance sheet, also known as the statement of financial position, populated for us, okay. So can you see how Sage does all the work that we should have done for ourselves? Once we have just managed to enter in the information, the relevant information, into Sage. Okay, so this is how Sage comes into play. We already know all this information, or should know all this information, based off of what we did last semester in regard to accounting. Okay, however, all right, Sage now does all that legwork for us. All right, so this is how it all comes together. I hope that is now making it a bit clearer as to what we are doing in terms of Sage and how it all comes together with what we did last semester in accounting. Okay, cool, awesome stuff. So at this point, we are now going to get into our topic for the day. Okay, but before we do that, I'd like us to have a look at where we are. We're on lesson number 4. Okay. So we covered the administration, okay, we covered suppliers, then last week also we covered items, in other words, inventory and services. Now we're covering customers. Okay, cool, awesome stuff. Okay. Sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong things here. I'm trying to go to here. Let's log in there. And then here, we scroll down to view my transcript. And here we scroll down, we say open curriculum. Here, and then here we simply click launch because we want to actually get into the subject for today. Okay, maybe as that loads, tell me guys, how did that help? Did the overview help? Just a thumbs up if it helped and a thumbs down if it didn't help. Did the overview help? Okay. All right. Thank you, Bongi. Thank you, Bayanda. Okay. All right. Thank you, Simpiwe. Right. Samkiliswe. All right. Thank you very much, guys, for the feedback. All right. Let's get into this here. I did already launch. So where's that? Yes. Okay. So today we are going into customers, as was highlighted, and what you will quickly see is that customers is literally just the same as suppliers. Okay, of course we know what customers are. Customers are the people that buy from us. Okay, so now let's step into categories. Remember in suppliers we had categories. Here we also have categories. Okay, you are able to create customer categories for your customers. You can use categories to group your customer accounts for reporting purposes. That's really why we categorize stuff, for reporting purposes, since customer reports can be printed per category. Okay. Now, how do we do customer categories? Same way we do supplier categories. We go to suppliers lists, and then you have supplier categories here. With customers, we go to customers lists and then customer categories. So let's try and see this practically. Okay, so let's go into the demo company. Okay, we go to customers lists, and then can you see this, and then can you see right at the bottom customer categories. Okay, just before I click on that, can you see how here we went to suppliers, went to lists, and look at that, supply categories. Okay, okay, just want to show you how similar these things are. Okay, and then this is the page that we are on our progressive curriculum. Right, here then you just simply click add categories. Okay, and then you can add your categories, or you can import your categories, remember, via a CSV file. Okay, all right, but we will not get into that just yet. Okay, I think here is sufficient. Click on add categories, and then this comes up, new customer category, and then obviously you enter that information, you click save, and you enter the relevant details. Yeah, and then you will have a new category. And that is it in terms of categories, should I say. Then you have sales reps. Okay, sales reps. Now, when it comes to sales reps, I think the best thing is to probably start with what are these guys, or what do they do? Okay, sales reps are people that sell your product or service on your behalf. Okay, sometimes they're a part of your company, sometimes they're actually like external sales consultants, okay, or agents, should I say. All right, accounting allows you to analyze sales by sales reps. Okay, so if you want to see who is really selling, who is most effective here, okay, or who is just taking up space, okay, you would probably analyze their sales, because that's their job, to sell. Okay, their use is optional. We don't have to use sales reps in Sage. Okay, it's optional. Users can enter sales reps by each sales document should you decide to use them. Okay, so if you do decide to use them but also don't want to create oh sorry, I lie. So if you decide to use them, right, on every document where there's a sale that took place, you can then enter in the sales rep who was responsible for that sale. That's what is being communicated there in that last sentence. Okay, to access this feature, click on customers lists and then list of sales rep. Okay, so let's do that. Customer, can you see? If I want anything to do with my customer, I go to customers. Okay, and then now I want to deal with sales reps, so I go to lists. Then can you see there? List of sales reps. Well, here we can add a sales rep, right? We can add Aubrey, for example. Okay, so you just put in my name, surname, email address, telephone number, okay, mobile number, and then obviously you come down, you click active, because remember, if we don't, wherever you see active, if that box is not checked, then you won't be able to transact with me. You won't be able to transact with me. So then you click save, or you can save and new if you want to add more sales reps. Okay, right. So there we are. Okay, if you click on new sales rep, this is the information, and we saw this. All right, we saw this. Okay, okay, that's sales reps. Okay, then we go on to master files. Actually, you know what? I think let's do processing. Let's see quickly. I want to see which one would be the best to deal with first. Okay, customer master files. Okay, guys, don't be confused or thrown off by this big English, ne? Customer master files is simple. All we're saying is customer information. That's it. Customer information. Okay? So if you want to add a customer, all right, what we do is we go to customers, lists, and then list of customers. Let's see this. Because I think sometimes you just need to see these things practically and you start to see, so you could quickly just go add a customer if you wanted to, but we're going to follow the typical process. So customers, list of customers. Yeah, okay, it's loading. Okay, and then here you can see the list of customers that are already registered or have already been added to our profile, okay, or our company. And then here, if you want to import, if you want to add a customer, you just click on add a customer, okay, and there you can see the information that needs to be populated. Can you see it's very similar to when we had new supplier? Someone raising their hand over there. Okay, all right, then that must have been an email. Must have received an email. Can you see that the information that is required, very similar, if not exactly the same, to that of a new supplier? The only difference is that the name here, the customer name, we had supplier name. Okay. Then we obviously only enter an opening balance if we already had one. if we've been already transacting with this customer, okay, then auto allocate receipts to oldest invoice. Remember I told you this feature, I spoke about it on the supplier side. It's literally just when we say, okay, cool, whatever money that this customer pays us is immediately going to go to the oldest invoice. Okay, and I don't really like it because sometimes I could be paying for something that a transaction that we did together for the most recent, or which was most recent. Okay, so that's why I prefer to kind of leave it blank, in all honesty, because sometimes, as I said, they may be paying for something more recent. Okay, right. So let's go on. Okay. The new customer screen will be displayed. Okay, this we saw. Okay, and then here, this you can see we went through cash sale customer. All right. If a customer purchases items from you with cash and the customer is not on your records, you can check this checkbox and load the master file as a cash customer. So in other words, this is someone you failed to get their contact details, uh, failed to get their name, but obviously you want to record the fact that they bought from you on cash. You then obviously just use that checkbox. Okay, right. Okay, then we spoke about opening balance. We spoke about that. Okay, typically if the person is a entity, sorry, let me not say person, if the customer is a entity, they'd obviously then have a VAT number. And then if we want to give them a credit limit, so in other words, they can buy things on credit from us, but then we want to limit them, then obviously you would write that limit in there. All right, and then here, if this customer deals with a certain particular sales rep, maybe a sales rep was assigned to them, all right, that information, the sales rep would then be included in that drop down that we obviously have put in by recording all our sales reps, and then you select, and then all right, accepts electronic transfers. This is just a feature that if accept electronic invoices, sorry, not transfers. The accepts electronic documents checkbox allows you to indicate that the customer has agreed to accept electronic documents. So in other words, we can send them invoices electronically, we can send them receipts electronically, whatever documentation pertaining to them, we can send it to them electronically. Okay. Then here, remember we had this very same down for our suppliers. Can you see this is the details? Okay, then activity, basically all the transactions we've done with them within these specific categories. Then we have additional contexts. So again, this is something that would typically work if the customer we've got is a business. Okay. Then notes, okay, if there's anything pertaining to this customer that we'd like to execute, then we can just make some notes, okay, or even just some notes just for the benefit of whoever deals with them next. We can also just leave some notes for them. Then we spoke about user-defined fields. All right, so I won't get back into that again. Then we have sales graphs. Okay, so we want to see how much were we selling to them last year? How much are we selling to them this year? Okay, seems like we're actually doing a lot better. Okay, a lot better. Either we're doing almost just as much in certain regards, or we're selling more, significantly more than. Okay. So the next one is quotes. We're going to speak on quotes soon enough. Okay, but if you want to look at all the quotes that we've assigned to this particular customer, this is where we'd find them. Then invoice, the same thing, all the invoices pertaining to this particular customer. And then finally, report layouts. Okay, report layouts. How are these reports that we produce for this customer supposed to be processed? Okay, or look like? Okay, right. So we've dealt with categories, sales reps, master files. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a break now, and then we're going to deal with processing and reports. We're going to deal with processing and reports. Okay. If there are any questions or thoughts, please feel free to leave them in the chat. Okay, I see Simpiwe has said something there. So please kindly remind me on the name you use on YouTube. No problem. I use my real name. Okay, that being Aubrey Sanzani. Okay, right, awesome stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's take that break. So I'm going to give you, I've been talking quite a bit, and I know you've just been listening, and that can be so exhausting. So I'm just going to give you guys up until 11. Please be back by 11, and then we will quickly finish off the remaining work that we have for today, which is not that much.